But yeah, I can't keep up with the times. I didn't know that McDonald's doesn't have the dollar menu anymore. They rebranded. Now they call it the value menu. $3 burgers. But someone was talking about, yeah, McDonald's, hey, they're too expensive. They were $8 burgers. I was like, $8 burgers? That's like, that doesn't sound like McDonald's. I've just been out of it, man. McDonald's now has $8 burgers. Leather manufacturers are struggling to make money because no one's buying anything made out of leather. And I was thinking about it. I was like, the last time I had a shoe made out of leather. Well, I mean, my work shoes are made out of leather. I think it's leather. It might be faux leather. Yeah, these shoes are some kind of polyester canvas kind of combo. I got the Chuck Taylors, which are canvas. My walking shoes, I thought they were made out of leather, but maybe they're made out of a fake leather too. All my bags are made out of nylon or polyester blends. Even my wristwatch band, it's some kind of fake leather on top, stitched on top of nylon. There are very few things that I wear that are made out of leather. When I first started doing this, before I bought all the GoPro accessories for mounting the camera, I had a nylon belt from, I don't even know where the nylon, my dad had the nylon belt. It's probably part of his old uniform, his Air Force uniform. And then I had a tobacco pouch that I had cut a hole in, and it was made out of leather, dried out leather. I got a leather jacket from my mother. It's a unisex leather jacket that was made in the 90s. Other than that, I've got nylon and polyester blend jackets and tracksuits. My hats are made out of polyester or plastic. I fit down with pure plastic. So, just those little things. I was reading that beef prices had gone up, but I didn't think that was news because beef was always too expensive for me. I eat mostly chicken. Now I can't afford chicken, so I eat beans and rice, canned soups. I don't know if I believe the news or not. They're talking about Americans wanting more fake meats. I was like, I'll believe it when I see it. But I think it's probably this neighborhood. This neighborhood is a meat-eating neighborhood. I smell people grilling every week. I went mostly kind of vegetarian, not out of any kind of moral or ethical reason, but because it was cheaper. It's like, beans and rice cost this much. I was like, yeah, beans and rice are cheap. Oatmeal went up in price. But not all oatmeal. Like my instant oatmeal, the instant oatmeal I used to buy, I say used to because It's like $16 for an 8 pound bag. The traditional oats are dirt cheap. It's like $1 a pound. It's like $8 for 8 pounds. So I don't know why instant oatmeal costs more than traditional, but I won't be buying instant oatmeal for a while. That's kind of your democratization of complaints against price increases. So if it costs too much, you just don't buy it. And I don't know how effective it is. I just know that I've gone almost 2 decades without seriously buying any beef products. Usually if I buy a beef product, it's because it was whatever I'm eating just happened to have it in there. The last time I bought a steak was maybe 99, 2000. I was doing the Atkins thing. And that's when I realized that meat's too expensive. My diet is a lot of grains, a few vegetables, and scraps of meat. I was thinking I'd see more people now that the weather's kind of gotten cooler the last couple of days. Yesterday there were a lot of people. Except on Harry Hines, that was weird. Maybe they've been cracking down on the what's the politically correct term, because I don't, you don't want to be offensive. I don't know if you can say prostitutes anymore. I don't know if you can say hookers. Not that I would care anyway, but I do kind of like the term sex worker, although that probably will go out of fashion. So I didn't see as many sex workers on Harry Hines. I don't know, there's been a crackdown, or they're mostly working, maybe they're doing the online thing now. I don't even know where you would go for that kind of stuff now. I remember Craigslist got rid of its ads, or it said it did. I have never been on Craigslist. Well, I gotta be honest, I've never been on Craigslist. I hear people making the jokes, curb alerts, the personal ads, but I have never actually typed the URL in and checked it out. I used to go on eBay quite a bit. And then I was shocked to see how eBay has changed. Like, I tried to log into my account and it was like, you can't do that anymore. You have to go through Facebook. I was like, what if I don't have a Facebook account? Anyway, it kept trying to prompt me to create an account, and I said I already have an account. Apparently my account got deleted. I'm like, alright. So I continued as a guest. I don't know what happened to eBay to where they got all that bad. I don't know. Maybe the site's dying. I deleted my Quora account. I think the internet's shrinking. What I mean by that is, I've heard all these rumors about the free ride being over. I think I can confirm it more and more on my end. I got an email from the Humble Bundle. They're asking me, what do you think of these subscription plans that we might roll out? And I was like, I don't want a subscription plan at all. Well, that's too bad, because you're gonna have to get one anyway. So they've already shown, you know, which way they're headed. They're gonna yank the whole bundle thing, and it's just gonna be the Humble subscription. I don't even call it a bundle, just call it the Humble subscription. Near as I can tell, I think you paid and you get access to 100 games, but I don't know if you own those 100 games. Doubt it. So that's what they're working on. $5 a month, $15 a month for so many packages, different types of packages. On the survey, I just kept pressing none of the above. Like I was saying, I guess I never liked a subscription model for gaming, because games are disposable. You play them one time. At least the single player ones are. Play through them once or twice and then you never play them again, unless it's a really good game. The only time I would think that a subscription model would work is in multiplayer games, because those change all the time. There's a server that constantly has to be maintained. I'm sure the people who played the multiplayer games would also hate that. They pay $60 for a game. They play it for a year. Actually, they play it for longer than a year. They play it for about 2 or 3 years. So that original $60 investment pays off after time. Whereas if the Humble Bundle gets its way, its least price bundle will be $5 a month for the subscription. You're playing your multiplayer game. And you're paying them $60 a year to play that game. Now some might say, well, you're getting other games with it. Yeah, but if you only play that one game, you don't care about the other games. I don't know, as I sit here and think about it, maybe it's a good idea. Like I said, my only gripe is if you stop paying the money, you don't keep the game. I don't know how it's going to work out in the future anyway. I've got like over 700 games, but they're mine. I take that back. I guess they aren't, but some of them are. I can download, and I got DRM versions of them, non-DRM versions of them. But most of my Steam games belong to Steam. And there's a scary thought. Well, so much for that. Somebody decided to put something in the middle of the trench. What's to stop Valve one day from just saying, if you want to get on stream, it's a subscription model. Suddenly my 700 games gets whittled down to about 200. Seriously, what is to stop Valve from suddenly wanting to decide they want to become a subscription-based gaming service? In fact, I'm right sure that's where they're going to be heading with the whole... There's supposed to be some kind of thing they're doing where you log into the site, you got a virtual machine that has the game on it, and all the hardware stuff is handled on the server, and all you're doing is streaming it to your computer. That will probably be a subscription model. If they ever decide to do that, that's the end of gaming for Windows, in my opinion. That's the only thing keeping me. It's the only reason I would ever buy the Windows operating system is for gaming. And the day that stops being the day that manufacturers stop doing that, I'll stop buying Windows. Because just about anything I can do on Windows, I can do on Linux with very little effort. And I mean, Linux has gotten so much better since I first started. Well, I remember just getting Netflix to work on Linux took some gumption. You had to put all these different types of package things on there because of silver light, and they got rid of that. And I said, well, bye-bye Windows, because I used to set up dual boots on all my computers. I had to boot in the Windows whenever I wanted to watch movies, watch Netflix, or play video games. Otherwise, I was using Linux. I wasn't planning on becoming like a Linux snob. Somebody gave me a Knoppix disk. I think I've said this multiple times anyway. It all started with a Knoppix disk, is all I gotta say. Couldn't get it to run right. Somebody says, why are you running Knoppix anyway? Ubuntu's the one you need to be running. I was like, okay. Everybody had their discussions on what flavor did you use. It's gonna run that red light. What was the first Ubuntu I had? 6.04, I think. Hardy Heron or something like that. Hosed a couple of Windows installations. Couldn't get my AMD cards to work right because of the proprietary drivers. No, these poor kids. I don't even know if Kerry has a football team anymore. I know they don't have much of a practice field. I guess it makes sense because it's not like anybody's going to be playing any games here. The whole time I played at these schools, we never, like, I'm probably saying this, and there are people in the country and in Crowley and stuff like that that find that hard to believe. Like, he's like, yeah, we had a practice field and a game field. But we never had a game field. We just had practice field and then Lowe's, and everybody drives to Lowe's. Lowe's had that shitty turf that was all wore out on top of some concrete. That's all it was carpet and concrete. And then every once in a while we played on a grass field, and that was Franklin. Franklin had been played out so much it was basically just mud. And we played at Cobb Field, which was anthills and mud. You think about that though, man. All the guys that are in the pros now, some of the players have never played on a substandard field. Actually, I'm thinking many of the players never played on substandard fields. They're like I said, nowadays the NFL and all these the pro games are legacy sports. Second, third, fourth generation guys playing in the NFL, or dudes that were just super athletes and they were recruited very young. Pop Warner might have been the only time that they ever played on a substandard field. After that, they were going to these academies that had like EDS over there. Practice field looks like a damn game field. You know, you got turf practice fields. Could some of these athletes ever have played football on fields that were being shared by soccer teams, track teams, and cross-country people? You know, in other words, the field got a marching band would go on there, and the field got a lot of usage. Oh, the lights are on, which means there's probably somebody over there. That gate might be even open. Actually, this light wasn't even on last time, was it? A lot of ice. Now the cool thing about coming this late is I don't see hardly anybody now. But yeah, going back to what I was saying, if you think about it, man, it's probably 100 games between junior high school and the pros. At least 100 games, 500 practices, at least. That's 600 sessions at least. If you running up and down things and getting tackled and hit, you're on a substandard field, that's where those injuries start to occur. Little divots here and there, not even spaces, poor traction on the surface. You get hamstring injuries, groin injuries, knee injuries, ankle injuries. It adds up, and then by the time you get to the pros, all those ligaments and cartilage have been worn pretty thin. That's what that one guy was pointing out. He was saying that younger players in the NBA now seem to be wearing out faster than previous years. He blamed it on strength and conditioning. I think I just blame it on the fact that these dudes go hard from junior high school to the pros. By the time they work through that first rookie contract, they are worn out. I mean, Michael Jordan didn't take up basketball till high school, and he missed a year because I think the coach said he was too small. So he got like maybe 2 years of high school basketball, and then they had definite off seasons. He probably wasn't playing basketball 24/7. These new cats, like I said, junior high school, getting recruited, going to camps, going to tournaments, going to tryouts. By the time they get to the league, they've had over 10 or 11 years of a basketball routine. And then they get through the pros in their first few years, and all that 11 years of wear and tear starts to get to them. The guy was talking about maybe it's the strength and conditioning, and they're selling stuff that isn't actual strength and conditioning. It's fad lifting. I'm like, maybe. Like he was saying one thing, guys like Jordan and them, they weren't really lifting all that much. You know, you see Jordan in a gym, but he's not, there's no personal trainer, he's just him pumping iron. You got guys doing weightlifting, plyometric boxes, cardio routines, stair climbing, isometric exercises, camps, drills, and some of the substances they're taking. It allows them to grow big, but it makes them grow bigger, but they stay at the same old ligaments. "7 feet tall with the 5 foot tall guy's ligaments." I kind of knew that. Is it Steph Curry? Steph Curry. Steph Curry. I kind of knew that Steph Curry was going to be on his last leg. He's been playing a long time. Back since the days of Don Nelson coaching the Mavericks. That's been a while, man. And small fella, all them big dudes, all that pounding. If I was thinking that Andrew Luck retires from the NFL, I was like, that was a smart move on his part, man. People don't realize how much pain these guys go through. You're quarterback in the NFL, only guy on the field that didn't do all the weight training and get all big and muscular. And you got a 270-pound man running into you in full speed. Andrew Luck. I guess his only knock is he had to be in the shadow of Peyton Manning. I think the thing that damned Andrew Luck was the fact that there were times when he tried to force plays. I was gonna say he's like a Jeff George type, but nobody's that bad. At least I thought no one was that bad. I think I've heard stories about the Raiders quarterback. You think he can get the ball in anywhere. Jeff George at least had an excuse. He had a cannon arm until he didn't. That's why he was forcing balls. From what I've heard, this one guy for the Raiders, he forces balls. He's got a lame duck throw. His balls go quack quack as they go out of his hands. I don't know. I might watch an NFL game one day. If I catch one on YouTube one day, maybe. But seeing as there's not that many online options for me, I just won't be watching NFL football anymore. I'm not paying them. I don't think NFL football is good enough to pay $100 for an entire season or whatever they want to charge you. What did Greg Easterbrook used to say? May contain football-like substance. That's kind of how I feel about the NFL. Hey, between the penalties, injuries, and commercials, there might be some football in there somewhere. Kind of like imitation crab. It kind of tastes like crab. That's what I love about college football is, man, they put it on the internet and they cut out all the stuff that I don't need to see. Next thing I'm watching it, and it's when you take all the bullshit out of a 3-hour game, you're left with 30 minutes. You can sum up a football game in 30 minutes. That's saying a lot. Sometimes I've seen them condensed down to 15, especially when it's one of those really awful games. The game between two unimaginative coaches and their vanilla offensive coordinators. 3-and-out punt, 3-and-out punt, 3-and-out punt, 3-and-out punt, 3-and-out punt, 3-and-out punt. Then it becomes a special teams game. It's crazy how overlooked special teams is. I was looking at that Bleacher Report video. They were talking about the 2010 San Diego Chargers. I just ignored them because it was like every year they were doing that shit on ESPN and all those stupid newscasters. They would crown some team because on paper this team looked like they were going to go all the way, and then they just didn't. The Cowboys were part of that hype. The 90s Kansas City Chiefs. ESPN, or was it Sports Illustrated? Back when people used to read them. Sports Illustrated used to have they'd say this year's Super Bowl champions, and they'd have the Kansas City Chiefs. And they'd have injuries and all sorts of junk, and they'd have the Kansas City Chiefs on there, and they wouldn't even get to the playoffs when they were playing more like the Kansas City Chiefs than the Kansas City Chiefs. I think the NFL's got a nice expansion there. St. Louis Chiefs. That could work. Not gonna happen, but it could work. They were saying that the San Diego Chargers would kill them with special teams the first like 4 or 5 games. In one game, they had 2 punt returns for touchdowns scored against them. They lose the game by 7. In the games where the special teams wasn't much of a factor, they were just blowing out teams. I never overlook special teams because I play Tecmo Bowl. There's so many games where the game would just grind down to 3 points. So I tried to make sure I scored every chance I got. You know, it was like kick the field goal, kick the field goal, kick the field goal. I was like, if a game like Tecmo Bowl tells you how important special teams is, don't you think that that would trickle on to the guys who get paid tons of money to be doing it? Field position, coffin corner kicks. I think about the Chicago Bears. They used to draft guys just so they could have special teams. They had no offense to speak of, but they had great special teams and great defense and went to the Super Bowl. I was thinking my favorite college football team to watch last year, or last 2 years, UCF. They had a great offense, great defense, and great special team. They had that big fat punter, Loudermilk. And that dude could kick it just about any spot he wanted to. Didn't look like a football player, but he hell of a punter. Probably didn't get picked up by any NFL teams. Or he might still be playing, I don't know. He's still walk on. That's what I loved about that team. It was like watching Bad News Bears or something. I love plucky teams. I love that the first Rangers team that went to the World Series. They were fun to watch. I love the 2011 Mavericks because of the fact that nobody gave them any respect. They had, the only guys, the local guys, were picking up on all that stuff. They were like, teams come into the Dallas and they have streaks going, and every time the Mavericks beat these guys and break the streak. And they had a little cartoon. It was Streak Busters. They had Jason Kidd dressed up like a Ghostbuster, and Dirk and all the other guys. That's when you knew they were a dangerous team. They were like beating people. Like some team would come in there hot and they'd play the Mavericks, and it was just that was a wrap. The Mavericks weren't a speed bump; they were a freaking wall. The 1994 Indianapolis Colts. I don't know if NFL Network did that. The top 10 underdog NFL teams. Number one would be the 1970 Dolphins. 70-71. You got the Dolphins with the no-name defense. You got the over-the-hill gang with the Redskins. I'm trying to think of another team that. The Baltimore Ravens of 2000 was kind of like that. Nobody took them seriously. They just knew they had a really nasty defense, and they were like, "Man, these guys are." It's like no team scores over 10 points per game against. And people knew that, and the experts knew that if they got into the playoff, it was going to be over. I think they even went in as a wild card. 9-7 wild card team. Beat Tennessee no problem. And Eddie George had a bad case of fumbleitis. I had never seen anything like that before. It really turned me off. And it was one of the things that Houston and Tennessee had. For them to be scared of teams, for them not to finish games, they were scared of Baltimore. I was like, y'all play these guys twice a year. How can you be scared of them? Eddie George. Looked like a football player, but he was an athlete. He avoided contact. It seemed like his heart was in football. One of those Heisman cursed. Did great things at Ohio State. Went to Tennessee. Almost did great things at Tennessee. And then he was out of the league after like 7 or 9 years. He wasn't in there that long. I mean, compared to all the other greats. Like, he retired and he was like, wait, I think he still got something. It's like, seems like he's got a lot in the tank. Eddie George is just one of those smart men that realized he wasn't going to break up his body to play football. Probably should have went into another sport. I think he was one of those track and field guys who ate his way out of track and field. What's the difference between Eddie George and a football player? Adrian Peterson. Same body type, same kind of style of running. Adrian Peterson, a football player. Eddie George is an athlete. Adrian Peterson's curse was he was on the wrong team. You put Adrian Peterson on the Titans back then. Tennessee probably beats Baltimore 17-10. I'd take that back. I think that was back when they were coached by Wade Phillips. No Wade Phillips team is ever going to was ever going to make the Super Bowl and win it. A salvageable defensive coordinator, but not a head coach. I used to call him Gutless Wade. I remember one game against the Giants, or I think it was that playoff game against the Giants. Jason Witten doesn't get the first down. I'm thinking, okay, they're going to go for it. Punt. I said, well, this game's over. That's why I call him Gutless Wade. Randy Galloway used to call him a doofus. Man, the Cowboys have had a lot of coaches. You think about that now, yeah? Man, there's been a lot of bad coaches. Jerry always wanted yes men. When he dies, will I go back to watching the Cowboys? No. Because his son will still be there. And I think his son is just as stupid as he is. Not as egotistical, but still cut from the same cloth. I think that's what depresses me about reading about NFL football and seeing the stats and knowing it's true, is that owners don't give a damn about their teams. The people that own NFL teams are just there to make money. They don't care about the home crowd or the city. They barely care about the players. They're really good at putting on an act. But at the end of the day, they are soulless, sociopathic monsters. Maybe even Machiavellians. They just love to manipulate. That's what pissed me off about these stupid cities that give these guys stadiums. Any other company, the city might give you a few breaks here and there, but for the most part, you're paying for the work building. The company's paying for work building. The NFL finagled these people, and they're saying, well, we think you should pay for all of it. Most, if not all of it. Otherwise, we walk. And everybody's like, that's preposterous. Well, look at all the revenue we can bring in with this, and this. And they start selling the snake oil. Putting on the confidence game. Now we've had 20 years of data of cities building stadiums. And cities go bankrupt and lose money because of this. And yet there you still see cities falling for it. Even though they've got 20 years of data that says they shouldn't. If your NFL team says they want a stadium and they want you to pay for it, or they'll walk, you tell them don't let the door hit you on the way out. Arlington didn't reap any of the money from Dairy World. St. Louis is still paying for a stadium and they ain't got an NFL team. Arizona. Don't be stupid. When Laura Miller let the Cowboys walk, they vilified her. Now she seems like a saint and genius. But she wasn't doing it for that reason. She was doing it because she was... Jerry Jones is egotistical, she was egotistical. And that was a clash that was actually good for Dallas for a change. Laura Miller was bad in other ways. Anyway, that's a whole nother chapter. A whole nother book. Dallas almost doesn't need a mayor. It really doesn't. It just needs... The mayor here is the most useless position. They don't really do anything. Dallas is almost like the Greek city-states. You got your little councils of tyrants. Every once in a while they get a consensus together to do something. But for the most part, they just stay in their little cliques. And they're really good at taking care of themselves. That's the other reason why Dallas doesn't really have any law. I don't even know who the mayor of Dallas is right now. And I don't particularly care. Is it Mike Rawlins still? That was sad watching him 2 years. Was it last year? Last year. Or whenever the house blew up. Sit there and tell us what he couldn't tell us. I was like, what good are you? Why are you here? And he was exasperated. I live in this weird time where, at least it's weird for me. On TV, the elected officials look like they're in charge. When I was growing up, on TV they looked like they were in charge and they knew what they were doing. The only guy that didn't appear that way was George Bush Sr. Gary Trudeau was talking about how during the Reagan administration, George H.W. Bush put his manhood in a blind trust. And it seems like he just left it there for the rest of his political career. Here's a guy who said he was on during the primaries and everything, was talking tough about what he would do. And then he got in there, and it was 4 years of begging and pleading. Begging and pleading the Japanese. Begging and pleading businesses. Begging and pleading Congress not to raise taxes. And they had to because his idiot predecessor left a huge bill. But now I see on TV in real life, it's just weird to see people vote for a guy. He gets in there and he can't do anything. He or she can't do anything. Your class president, I mean your United States president is about as effective as your class president was in high school. It's like, well, I got his pizza for lunch. Yay. You're still going to be doing the homework. You still got to do a science fair project. You still got to go to school. And school's still gonna suck. Student government should have taught a lot of kids the truth about politics and their government. And that is that it's pretty much just there for show. It's a popularity contest. And the only voice that matters is the voice of the guy who they pay and appointed to look after the place. The only voice that matters in the United States government is the Fed chairman. and maybe the people on trade commissions. Because as the world becomes more globalized, forces outside. That's what they think. That's the thing that didn't trip me out about the Trump thing. Everyone's talking about foreign influence in the election. And I was like, oh, you're worried about the one election. What you don't know is that foreign influence has already pretty much taken over the business world and a lot of your neighborhoods. Like the fact that it might have happened to the president, that's just, now they're open about it. When money became free speech and corporations became people, foreign influence was free to come out of the closet. Multinational corporations don't have to hide anymore. It's like, wait a minute. It's like, we got a voice now. Corporations buy citizenship. Corporations bought citizenship. Even if they think about that cat in the truck. He thinks he's the boss. Somebody gave that asshole a set of keys and he thinks he's the boss. I think he fails to realize that I have his boss's phone number. Or that I and the people who use this field are his boss's boss. Well, at least in theory. Once again, I'm talking about politics. I was looking at some internet discussions. They were talking about how America's not number one on a lot of things anymore. What was his name? Is it Crowder? I'm from Canada, and Canada doesn't let you have these rights, and blah, blah, blah. And America's much more freer. You know, you can't say this stuff, and you can't say that stuff. And I was like, in America, you can't say this stuff, and you can't say that stuff. Crowder got it twisted. Highly misinformed. The reason why America goes down in ranking for Freedom Index is because of things like free speech zones. The stupid idea that you need a permit to have a protest. Like, no, that's not how it works. So then the law got perverted and twisted and saying you're trespassing on property and you gotta have permission to get a permit to get this stuff, blah, 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 blah. Otherwise, we'll arrest you. If you get this permit, we'll allow you to protest in this zone that's about 500 yards away from the actual event. A little concrete slab. And oh, by the way, there's gonna have to just happen to be airplane traffic going on around you at all times to drown out your little protest. As if being 500 yards wasn't enough, we're also gonna make sure that you can't be heard from the spot that you're at. The other thing that takes Americans out of the Freedom Index, you have to have a job in America. Have to. And your job will dictate what you can and can't say. You want to keep your job? Better clam up. The things that you might want to watch on TV, or the things you think need to be said on TV, those are being controlled by groups that weren't elected by anybody, that were appointed. The FCC. And whatever other little... Well, back in the day it was like the Catholic League and all those little religious groups. But now it's mostly the FCC and a bunch of other think tanks that get to sit together and decide what you can and can't watch on TV. And I don't mean just like, you know, naked people and cussing and blood and guts. I mean like information about how your government wasted money, what corporation got welfare, who didn't get punished when a corporation defrauded a bunch of people out of money or got bailed out, and what was or wasn't said in a settlement. We don't admit we did anything wrong. Here's some money to make the case go away, and nobody can talk about it or read about it for X many years. So yeah, when you got stuff like that going on, your freedom index tends to suffer a bit. Crowder and them were talking about things like the government says that you can't say certain anti-PC things and you can't say certain hate speech. I'm like, okay. So that's what makes our freedom better than their freedom, is the fact that we can't demonize and bully minority groups. Well, I guess you got them there, Crowder. Except there were guys spouting hate speech and bigotry, and they weren't allowed to talk at college campuses. They would try to have a protest and they couldn't have the protest. And this was in the United States. So yeah, it happens here too. If a group's just a little too controversial, they won't have much to say. And not too many platforms to say it. I don't know, but I think it's just a distraction over a bigger picture. It's starting to be that there's no such thing as a #1 country or anything like that. It's all the same. We won't be talking about countries, we'll just be talking about parts of the world. And right now there are parts of the world where if you are over 65 years old, it is better for you to live there if you got some money, a modest amount of money, or a pension or a stipend coming in, than to live in this country. This country is for working people only. You stop working, you cease to become a citizen of the United States of America. You have no say. I'm sorry, if you're poor and not working in the United States of America, let me rephrase that. Every time. That was the thing. Crowders in cities. Got everybody talking about speech freedom, when the Freedom Index is also about economic freedom. What's the term? He was conspicuously silent about that. He mentioned that the infant mortality rate in the United States, the statistic has been long debunked, but he didn't link to it. So where's the evidence of it being long debunked? Basically, he was saying, and it sounds like it might be a valid point, but I had to do more research about it. He was saying that the only reason the United States is so behind other countries in infant mortality is because the United States actually reports this, whereas in other countries they just let the babies die. And I was like, okay. Once again, no study, no proof of that either. He's saying that the Norse, the Swedes, the Scandinavians in general are having premature babies, and then they're just letting them die, and then they don't report that in certain statistics. And it sounds like bullshit. Not that I say it out loud. He's saying these other developed nations don't report prenatal and natal deaths like the United States does, and that's why the United States is always reporting so poorly on that metric, even though this metric was agreed on and is being used by the UN. So that means the other countries pretty much have to be kind of on board with that. I mean, after all, they're on board with the Kyoto Agreement, which the United States isn't. Who knows? Who knows? Bottom line is, all those guys who talk about there's a no-spin zone seem to be good at doing the most revolutions per minute. Are we still the best? I don't know. I honestly don't know. We still got the money in the military. I think what'll change my mind about people talking about America's no longer exceptional is when the reserve currencies of the world, actually, and that's the only reason the United States is the reserve currency is because of World War II. So maybe I should stop using that metric. The United States wrote this in place, the world kind of stayed with it, and they stayed with it ever since because no one else wants to be in the top spot, not being able to manipulate their currency. Like the Chinese would never want that top spot because then they couldn't have cheap labor. So they like being an exporter, not an importer. The United States is an importer, rarely an exporter. There are a few products here and there that the United States exports to the rest of the world, but for the most part, the United States is an importer. Japan, does Japan want to be the reserve currency? Probably for the same reason the Chinese don't want to be. Plus, when it comes to change, the Japanese don't want to be the reserve currency. Change is not something that the Japanese do well. For 100 years, girls wore skimpy little bathing or little bottoms called barumas. And there's some schools that still have it in place. They have a rule that says the government said, the federal government over there, the main government says that you can't make kids go to school on Saturdays. And yet there are still schools that make their kids go to school, like light school, quote unquote, or club activities on Saturdays. Japan doesn't change unless it's at the end of a barrel of a gun. The gun could be figurative. Most often, though, it's literal. Remember, the lost decade is now going into its third decade. You know, the lost decade has now become almost the lost century. They're 30 years into it. Getting there. So it's something to think about. So, wanting to become the world's reserve currency means a lot of change. I don't think Japan's ready for that. Could the euro become the world's reserve currency? I don't think so. I think the European Union's at a crossroad right now. They're trying to figure out if they want to keep doing things business as usual. You know, the austerity measures, the Brexit deal, Russia. Russia and Turkey. I think if Europe could ever reconcile their differences with Russia, and I guess to an extent Turkey, they could become a lot more powerful than they are now. I truly believe that. But it looks like it's still Christianity versus Islam. Genghis Khan versus trying to think of who was the last emperor of Rome. Genghis Khan and the Mongols versus Rome. you're saying that even though Russia was the Eastern Empire. I was like, right, but when I went to school, nobody ever talked about the Eastern Roman Empire. It was like Rome fell in 473 AD, and then the medieval period began. I was like, wait a minute. I was like, what happened to this other one? There's not really much you want to know about there. I was like, well, maybe I do. Well, there was Constantinople, and then Istanbul, and that's it. Okay, we just don't want to talk about it anymore. I was like, okay. Still mad about that. I think that's why Turkey can never get into the European Union. I was like, yeah, can you change it to Constantinople? Well, like, it's been Istanbul for 1,000 years. Let it go, guys. It's like, nah, we want to, but we can't. I was like, how about a small part? Can you make a small part of it Constantinople? No, it's Istanbul. Something along those lines. I don't know, I think of it like the way the United States fights Latin America. It's the same way Europe fights the Islamic East, or I want to say the Arabic East, or the Middle East in general. There's going to come a day where you're going to have a lot of Europeans mixed with a lot of Arab and Persian. And you're going to have those languages taught in school as a secondary language all across Europe. Ugh. Maybe it's the COPD. I know I've been talking this whole time, but I'm still out of breath. Not because of that, but because I think it's harder to breathe. So then my legs aren't under me. I'm sitting here jogging, and my clothes are just soaked. There's not a dry spot on my body. It's the annoying aspect of Dallas, where it could be 60 degrees out here and I would still be pouring sweat, because they have all these man-made lakes and artificial humidity. Are they looking for somebody? That's what it used to mean. I don't know what it means now. Actually, I do know what it means, excuse me. That might have been a Care Flight chopper. I think they did a news report on that, talking about how I gotta be careful talking about medical stuff. I rescind what I was about to say and reference back to what I was talking about earlier. Depending on where you work at, you don't have a lot of freedom of speech. So, some things that I can't talk about for fear of losing my job. Healthcare. You got the money, you're gonna live a long time. I won't say you'll live great for a long time. I'm just saying you'll live a long time. Yeah, that won't be me. You're not gonna have me hooked up to a doodad. Probably not gonna get any treatment that tries to extend my life another 10 years. I spend the rest of my 10 years paying for it. What I wish for and what I hope for is that one day it's just a stroke. No one else is around me. I just stroke out and that's the end of it. That's the way I want to go. I'm sleeping, or hell, maybe even I'm just running like this, and then all of a sudden I just stroke off. Like I said, what would be convenient is if I stroke off and like fall into the ocean. Stroke off and fall into the ocean, or stroke off in the middle of a forest somewhere and get eaten. Something where my folks don't have to, my family doesn't have to worry about my body. Oh, now we gotta bury this bloated bastard. Hopefully I stroke out and fall into an incinerator. I gotta refuel it in my knees sometimes. I'm thinking that part of my future is going to be joint replacements and walkers. All sorts of weird medications that turn me into a human zombie. I mean, a real life zombie. That's the difference between my lights and that light. I think it's bright. Mine's bright too. It's an LED, but it's an LED that's bright. Different type of brightness. That right there looked like some kind of super halogen or something. And that sucker's plugged into an electrical outlet or patched in. Mine are dangling free and solar powered. So sometimes, depending on cloud coverage or those stupid cats, my light may not shine as bright as long. I say stupid cats because they'll be out there all night prowling, setting the light off. I swear sometimes they're doing it on purpose. I think my cats dig artificial light. You know, they can see in the dark, but apparently they like the light better. I don't know. Case in point. Well, there's a cat that doesn't like the artificial light. What do you think of that? Not quite Resident Evil scary. I only get scared when something falls out of the tree and then it growls at me, or something slashes at me. Like that scene from That scene from Resident Evil 2. Now that you're looking at the graphics and they're all blocky and everything, it doesn't seem as scary, but it was back then. It was like you were immersed in the game. Graphics be damned. You're down there in the Raccoon City Police Department basement. There's the kind of, you're sitting there thinking to yourself, zombies come through windows and doors. Windows and doors. And so you get comfortable. And you think, windows and doors, I'm okay. And you're coming around that corner. There's a concrete wall. A solid looking concrete wall. Doesn't look like anybody drew anything on it. Like you could tell the difference between something that's a drawn surface where something's going to happen in the background. And this looks like the background. And you're walking around that corner in that concrete hallway, feeling safe. And fucking Nemesis busts through the wall. You drop the controller. Oh my god. You scramble to pick up the controller. You're running. You're pumping rounds into the wall. Barely. You're not pumping any rounds into poor Nemesis. And even if you are, they're just like slowing him down. They're not really stopping him. Scared the crap out of us. We were playing on a big screen TV in the dark on Halloween. Nemesis came busting through a solid concrete wall, and we just lost it. Nobody comes busting through solid concrete. It's just zombies don't do that. I say apparently Nemesis just didn't get that rule book. Boom! Big freak's just chasing you down. I'm surprised there's never been a Resident Evil game where that's all that comes after you is Nemesis. Like, there's like 4 or 5 of them. One was enough. Like, he was the main villain of Resident Evil 1. It was the Tyrant. The Tyrant virus had mutated and turned into this giant thing that had a heart outside of its chest and a big claw for hand, and he chases you around the lab. You're sitting there trying to shoot him with a damn rocket launcher. And you're like, if I just keep running in the same circular pattern, I'll be fine. Oop, Nemesis changed patterns. Hey, damn it. And now knowing how strong Nemesis, or Tyrant slash Nemesis was, why didn't he just pick up that table and flip it across the room? It comes straight at you. Why was he chasing you around? I haven't been keeping up with the Resident Evil games. I don't know if Nemesis ever got a brain. If he ever did, that's game over. Smart Nemesis? Shh. People say, I thought that's what Wesker was. Wesker wasn't that big. Now, how do I know all this? I retired from gaming in 2000. I read the wikis. I see the videos on YouTube. But no, I never play the games. I think I've got Resident Evil 4 and 5 on Steam. I played precisely 15 seconds of, I think it was Resident Evil 5. Ugh. Now there's a move that you can't do without an X button. That's my X button there. It's like, you know that move that's hard to do? You press this button and he goes charging at the thing and he goes past the ledge. That's my difficult controller move. Although this is a video game, you'd make me run all the way to the edge, hit the button at the very last second, and watch as I just kind of go limp and try to go over the chasm. I guess I need to start working on the plyometric boxes. What day could you work in? See, that's where I would do it on Friday. On Friday is probably when I would do it. On a Friday, it would be me doing core arms, and plyometrics. But I'm never going to work out on Fridays, so that's a moot point. Let me rephrase that. As long as I have a job, working out for 5 days will seem like nothing more than a pipe dream. I used to be able to do it when I worked 32 hours, but I don't work 32 hours anymore. That's the thing that is kind of getting to me, is that I gripe and I complain because I'm reading stories of the Three Stooges and how they got ripped off for royalties, but they were paid pretty well for. They were paid like $100,000. They were paid like $100,000 per year to make those films. They were paid comfortable salaries to beat themselves up. But part of the provision of them being able to get $100,000 a year was they had to give tours of the studios for extra money. I don't know, like I said, I'm getting all this off the internet. Who knows how true any of that is. But the bottom line was, while they were getting paid what seemed to be a pretty good salary, or like people say, well, they were getting paid pretty good, you know, I would have taken that contract. You lessen your worth. They were single-handedly putting Columbia on the map and barely making what the studio head was doing. All he would do was cover up actors' indiscretions and make back alley deals with the mob for financing. So while these studio heads were doing dirty things, the guys who were doing the clean stuff were getting pittances for what they were actually worth. The Stooges worked for 23 years without getting a single raise. Day in, day out, beating themselves up, doing physical comedy that was causing physical deterioration. And only getting a fraction of what they were worth. And so I mentioned all this because if human beings are supposed to be so great, then one of the things we should always be doing is striving to get better. Like I said, that's what bugs me about conservatism. Is conservatism sometimes makes it seem like we're already as good as we're going to get. Stop trying to rock the boat. And like the guy said, like the lady said one time, sometimes rocking the boat is the only way to get the damn thing moving. You're sitting in a boat in the middle of the ocean with limited provisions and time, telling everybody else who's in the boat just how great everything is. Well, at least we got the boat. That's what bugs me about conservatism. It's this attitude of, at least we got the boat. Or maybe it's just not conservative, but whatever the forces are that tell you you shouldn't complain about how you got it at work. A lot of people have it worse, or in the past they had it worse. And now statistically we're finding out that's not right. Statistically we're finding out that, in my boat analogy, we're in the boat and provisions are running low. And the fat people in the boat are eyeballing the skinny people in the boat and thinking about devouring them so they can live in the boat longer. That's what I think of the rich. The rich are the fat people in the boat talking about, we may have to eat someone. we may have to eat someone else. Maybe that's what South Park was talking about. That one episode where they all got trapped in the room together eating each other. And they said, we may have to eat again. And the other people were looking like them and said, what are you people, diabetic? Jimbo in South Park was the perfect representation of that one side of America, like the independent spirit, the gun culture, the guys whose ideas just seemed horribly wrong and bad, but everybody followed them anyway, because I guess of the way the guy was saying them. Jimbo and Ned. Anyway, going back to the Stooges, I'm just reading about all this stuff that the people in old school Hollywood had to go through. Like the Wizard of Oz, I'm thinking it's the greatest thing ever. You know, or not me, but I'm just like watching it as a kid. Wow, it's in color. I watched a lot of old black and white films, and this was in color, not just color, but Technicolor. That thing was like super color. Julie Garden's lips were like rose red. Her skin was this alabaster white with little flecks of red in her face, like for freckles or whatever. She was this hot tomato. I think maybe that's where they got the term from. There was some guy in the 30s who was just looking at Judy Garland and screaming, wow, that's a hot tomato. She was. In color, she was a hot tomato. She was just red. Like this hot, sultry red. You were just like, man, I want to seduce the hell out of Julie Garland. I didn't know that at the time, but I know that now. She was hot. Anyway, she was hot, and she was a hot red tomato in a bright blue outfit. And so you're watching this historical film of great cinematography and an adaptation of a popular book. And you're thinking, wow, that was just such a wonderful story. I could watch that 1,000 times. Until you find out how the sausage is made. And you're reading stories about what the actors and actresses had to go through. The dudes wearing that makeup. There were two guys who played the Tin Man. And the makeup damn near killed one of the guys. Because they used aluminum powder on him. I don't know how true this stuff is or not. I know that I heard he had a bad reaction to the paint, and I heard the studio was pretty mad about it. What I didn't know, or I can't confirm, is that the studio had the audacity to ask the guy, when are you going to come back to work and help us finish the film? And he's like, dude, I almost died. I was like, I'm going to recover here, and you guys are on your own. There was this kind of sociopathic disconnect where they just did not care. They just saw their actors as nothing more than a tool to use to put out this film. Somewhere along the line, they lost their humanity, or since reading about some of these studio heads, they never had it to begin with. They don't really care about the lives of their actors, or they didn't. Now they got unions that keep them honest. Let me rephrase that. They keep them honest in America. That's why they no longer film in America. They go somewhere else where they can skirt all these laws and the unions. So yes, things do seem to be getting better. Magic word, seem. Let me rephrase that. Things seem to be okay, but things could be good. I'm not even asking for great, I'm asking for good. And you know, one thing about good is it doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be good. And the message we're getting is America can't do good. Good costs money. You should be satisfied you're getting okay. The rest of the world doesn't have okay. I was like, you're right, the rest of the world doesn't have okay. Okay. It's like, wait, Norway has good? Iceland has good? I was like, why don't we have good? We're supposed to be the United States. We don't have good? Oh, well, you know, the metrics that they use to measure their good, it's just flawed. They're not really doing good. They're doing barely okay. I was like, well, they don't seem to think so. You know, the countries where they're doing worse than okay, they're saying they're doing worse than okay. They're showing they're doing worse than okay. They're jumping off of stuff. They're like, you're not going to ask me if I'm doing worse than okay? That's fine. I'll just jump off of something. I'll just walk into something. I'll just, you know, cut my head off or set myself on fire. That's kind of the red flag that things aren't okay. We're getting some of those red flags here. Entire families have their last supper and they commence to execute themselves. I want a good America, and I just will not shut up or settle down until I get with just an okay America. I was like, what are you doing to make it happen? Well, what I was doing was voting, writing congressmen, volunteering. And then it got to the point where it was like, well, it's just, it wasn't getting anything done, so I'm working through my fatigue. I need a revolution. All the other bullshit isn't getting it done.